Hello, everybody. It's me, Bigfoot, Michigan Rob. It's Saturday, July 22nd, and it's time for another subscriber or emailed encounter story to me that I'm presenting to you. Before we start, thanks to each and every single one of you for subscribing to Bigfoot, Michigan Rob, found on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in on Tuesdays at 9 in the East and Thursdays at 1 in the East for my shows. I appreciate it. Thank you to each and every single one of you. The super thanks is open should you care to donate. If not, please share me out and do what you do on a daily basis. I appreciate all of you. This is a fascinating story. We talk a lot on my channel about dogmen, military dogmen, the creation of dogmen. I got this from a alleged governmental employee who has a fascinating story about lab experiments. He goes by the name of John. He was very indiscreet, or very discreet, I should say. You can tell he was a little apprehensive during this. So I'm just going to present it to you, and you give me your thoughts, leave a comment. A lot of the stuff, I, for one, will go on record. Oh, well, I've been on record, and I think that we do things. I think we make things and put them in our forests. So, with that being said, I'm going to get on with today's encounter that I got just a few weeks ago. Hello, Rob. This is John. For the purpose of this email, my name will be John. I have an incredibly terrifying account of what I did for an off-the-grid contracted company for the government. My work did not last very long, as you will soon find out. I can say this: we do create militant creatures for a variety of purposes. In my mind, mostly nefarious and extremely deadly. The ramifications that have followed are widely spread, and I know a lot about these things. I first started my career getting degrees in molecular science and DNA studies. Upon that, I joined the Army and worked for 20 years in exploratory research. I can't give you the exact name of the department as it is classified. I can tell you this: the last 5 years of my career, I was stationed at a DUM, also known as Deep Underground Military Base. Again, not giving up the location, it was in the United States and it was in the desert. For this email, I will focus on what I did the last 5 years at the DUM, then my contracted job for the military. Otherwise, this email would turn into a short novella of all of my experiences and work that I've done. In the lab, it was set up in layers. In my department, I worked with manipulation of molecular cells and gene splicing. I was given an assignment, an allotment of data, and went about my research and studies. Upon the completion of my work, my work was sent to another layer in the department. It kind of reminds me of the story of Bob Lazar and his alleged work at Area 51, where his work was passed up the line similar to mine. I did this for 5 years, and I started to wonder what we were doing. It got to the point where my senior officials asked me to stop asking questions. Then, out of the blue, I was forced to retire with a full pension and was reminded that all my work was top secret, and I received a more than generous amount of hush money. That, Rob, was for my silence. It was enough money on top of my pension where I gladly came up with a case of amnesia regarding my work. So this guy was paid off, got a lot of money for his silence and his work that he did for 20 years in the government. It was not until about 3 years later where I was contacted by an undisclosed party that wanted to meet with me and talk about a very important assignment, and it had to do with protection of our national security. At first, I thought this to be a test by our military, or my former military, in an effort to see if I was about to disclose any of my work. Apprehensively, a month later, I agreed for a meeting. I was picked up at my home, taken to a military air base, where I met up with some officials that I had worked previously closely with me when I worked in the DUMS. I was assured by my officials that this was not a test, that I came highly recommended by our government as they were the contractors for this company. Still apprehensive, I felt somewhat assured and I boarded the plane. Again, the location is not to be disclosed on this platform. I can say that it was located, though, in the middle of the desert, and again, this was below ground. The facility was much bigger than I had expected. What I witnessed was both terrifying and fascinating at the same time. All sorts of tanks were filled with a form of a liquid base. They were lined up with mutations of humanoid figures that did not seem to be natural at all. Being a scientist, I was immediately filled with emotion and adrenaline. All the fears that I might have had were now subsided. After several hours of discussion and walking the plant, I finally asked what role I was to play for this company. I was told that many of these mutations had been released in remote sections of the United States. They said these creatures were designed to decrease the amount of deer and other animals that seem to overpopulate these designated areas. Being a scientist, I immediately asked as to why to interrupt the balance of the process of natural selection. Certainly, Mother Nature is not one to be manipulated. Now, this guy says this, and he's manipulating genes and DNA, in his 20 years at the government, okay? So now all of a sudden he has a conscience? Sorry, John, if you're listening. Everything in the wild has its own process and its own way in which the wilderness is to be shaped regarding its own population, breeding, eating, interacting, and providing the ecosystem all it needs to thrive. I asked, what is the reason behind my visit? Let's get down to nuts and bolts. Finally, a man who said nothing during the time finally spoke. John, I will be frank with you. These creatures have gotten out of control, and humans have gone missing, and in some instances, we fear have been killed. The animals have been savagely killed in higher numbers than we had expected. We have been experimenting with a form of mind control with these creatures to help track and control their habits, with the eventual original goal of being able to control the population. It's just gotten out of control once again, he reiterated. The first part of what we had told you was in fact our first objective. It's just gone south. Fascinating and reluctantly, I agreed a 90-day contract and went to work a week later with this company. I can't get into the details of my 90 days of work. What I can say is this. After 2 weeks of my work in trying to help create a form of mind control, and all at the same time enhancing these bioengineered creatures, I realized this was not at all about controlling the forest or these militant creatures, which I'm going to get into. I do believe this to be a military operation to create fighting machines. The stories of militant dogmen do exist. In fact, I have seen these in the lab. 7 to 8 foot humanoids with massive bodies and shapes and do look like wolves, werewolves, and they also are bipedal. I never seen one roam free or in action. The ones I seen were in tanks in a docile form. I would never want to see one of these out of the tank or in person, and I, not a believer in God, pray that these beasts are not responsible for taking human life. But who am I kidding? Needless to say, I could not participate in my role at this lab. At the end of my contract that I was given, once again, I was given a bonus for my silence. Very similar to the bonus I received when I left the military. I often wonder if I'm truly safe. And I wish I would never have gotten involved with this. Signed, John. That was shorter than I normally put out, but the information this guy gave to me, there's a lot to unpack here. I believe that the government is responsible for creating a lot of these things. First email I've ever gotten from somebody regarding this. I found it fascinating. You know, is it true? Is it not true? I don't know. I present what is sent to me to you guys because you guys are sharp. I know you enjoy these. It's food for thought, but it is something to think about. There is something going on. I think we all would agree. Does this corroborate anything? In fact, if this is indeed what's going on, some of my beliefs, are brought to the forefront here. Again, I hope you enjoyed that. It is Saturday. It is the weekend. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share me out. Please subscribe. Super Thanks is open. And until next time, I'm Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Have a fabulous weekend and take care.